thinking, oh, this big machinery, if we go at it, they will crush us. That's the kind of fodder for fear that is existent all over the place. And I'm afraid to say the middle class is talking too much. We are talking too much. In WhatsApp groups, it's talk, and exchanging all kinds of forwards and videos, and huyu amesema hivi, uliona hivi, leo ulisikia ile ilikuwa kwa news. And in how many groups are you where that goes on? So it's just talk, and they're very happy. They'll even increase the space for you to talk. If all you do is talk. The thing that will make a difference is courage, to step out and say, I will suffer, I will die, I will pay the price for what I believe. And I say that as someone who is a very easy target. But the courage that God has built in me over the years, facing a world that stigmatizes me, facing a world that tells me I don't belong, facing a world that tells me where kaa hapo, dunia sio yenu, nchi hii si yenu. The courage to go through hell is what has produced who I am today. And I repeat, I'm a very easy target. And the only thing that drives me is courage for truth. If something is true, even if I'm alone, I'll go the whole hog. And that is important. And I want to inspire each of you to step out and do something unusual and stop talking and move into the action line. I have missed abductions very narrowly, but here I am. Nothing will stop me. I've been on the streets with the Gen Zs, not knowing which road to take. The Gen Zs would show me which road. At one point, they wanted to fire at us, and all there was human shield in Eldoret the day that they were bringing the wheelbarrows down. And so I want to tell you, courage will give us the Kenya we are looking for. The second thing I would like to say is that courage expels fear altogether. At first, it's a bit of an adrenaline rush, but fear, when fear is gone, you will achieve the results that you're looking for. And I want us to face fear in the face and say you are just an emotion. And you are just an adrenaline. And here is the thing. Whether they surveil on us, whether they, follow us or whatever, tutakufa mara moja tu. So here's the thing. The day you disconnect your private from the public, that is the day you will actually end up in their hands. I don't care if they listen to my phone. I don't care if they follow me on an Uber, ride or, sit in the classes that I'm teaching. I don't care. What I believe in private is what I say in public. It is wrong to kill my child because they are asking you to be accountable. That will be wrong in private and in public. You are an animal. You, with animal behavior, if you abduct somebody from their family and hold them incommunicado with all the learning around you, just because you've got power that you are given. It is wrong in private, it's wrong in public. So whether it's Ruto or Farouk, whether it's Kindiki or whoever it is, DCI, all these NIS guys, you know what? In the end, tutakuzika tu, mchanga, mchwa, itakukula kama vile inakula wale mnashika. So it is wrong, and it will be wrong if you want for people to do the right things for you, then you do the right things for them. It's a rule of life. It's a rule of thumb. It doesn't matter which religion. You can't kill people, dump their bodies in quarries, and just imagine life will go on. Too much blood on the hands of this government. Wale wanasikiliza wasikize sahi. The blood of innocent people haitaenda bure. Haitaenda bure. And lastly, let me just say this. Once you amass courage, once you expel fear, the only other thing left is for us to unite. You know, these Lone Ranger tactics are going nowhere. These popularity schemes, ni mimi ndio nimefanya hii, ni mimi ndio nitafanya hii, I want to be the one who will be the president, I want to be the one who will, you know, all these things, hazitatusaidia. If we are all saying the same thing, we need to come together. And that is the only thing that will deliver the kind of thing we're looking for. And so that's why I'm in this space. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for what you're doing. And I'm here for solidarity, to say expel the fear and let's unite and give Kenya what it's looking for. Thank you.
Asante sana. And thank you for your service to this nation in all the capacities that you serve. Joshua, this is your moment. Give us a summary, maybe we'll bring you back, but just introduce the viewers and tell us what you've done to overcome the fear. I saw you shed tears, and my heart went out to you, and I wore the heart of a mother when I saw you recount your story. But we salute you for your courage. Joshua, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Redemptor. Can you hear me?
Yes. Karibu.
Awesome. Asante. Good evening, everybody, and it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for taking your time, and thanks, Redemptor and Dr. Mumbi, for organizing this piece. Thanks, Papa RK, for your contributions. You've always spent time being with us in these spaces and, you know, contributing to what's happening in Kenya right now. We appreciate. But I've been called to speak to, you know, my probably experience as to how I've overcome the fear. And I'm happy we are talking about courage, the virtue of courage that will give us the Kenya that we want, the Kenya we deserve, the Kenya we long for, the Kenya we are looking for. I think it's a matter of getting to understand that what we are fighting for is bigger than me as a person, is bigger than you, is bigger than us as individuals. It's also understanding that the persons or the ideas we are fighting are destructive, and that we should focus more on getting them out of our way than focus on whether or not we're going to be alive the next minute. So really, one thing I tell myself is that if the government wanted to find me, they will find me. But they will find me, but there is a way I can delay that, you know, them finding me. There's a way I can make their games longer, to the extent that probably they'll find no need or no use in pursuing me anymore. But they will find me ultimately. But I get encouraged every day when I listen to many Kenyans speak of the vices that surround the administration in place. In spaces, on TikTok, in person, you meet people in person, you listen to young people, you listen to our parents. An example is yesterday I was in a restaurant, and when I got in, a group of 3 women and a gentleman pointing at me, and I realized I didn't want to show them that I saw, but I saw them talk about me. So when I was done taking my coffee, I went to the table and asked them, "Are you my relatives?" They were like, no, but we support what you're doing. We actually saw you come in and we are, you know, we are happy. We support. Have you paid the bill? You know, it is the little things that Kenyans are doing that tell you these people will not come for you, and the Kenyans will look at you and not do a thing or not say a thing. It is the realization that I am not alone in this fight. and that all of us are fighting something. All of us are fighting this regime. All of us are fighting for a good Kenya, for a better Kenya, for a peaceful Kenya, for a law-abiding Kenya, for a Kenya that is guided by the principles and values enshrined in our Constitution. It is the realization that everyone is in this fight and everyone's eyes is on the goal. All right? The goal to birth a new Kenya, the goal to birth a better Kenya that is not led by money, thirsty cabals. That is what we are. That is what keeps me going. That's what keeps me alive. Because I know someone next door will not hear me shout in my house and not come and check what's happening now that they've seen what this, government is capable of doing. I know someone in a matatu will not see them push me out of that matatu or pull me out of the matatu into their Subarus and not say a word. I know people will probably grab me out of their hands because they know that we are fighting for them, that we are fighting for a better Kenya. That is what keeps me going. That is what gives me the courage. And the fact that I listen to people every day and I hear the different ideas, though diverse, but for a common purpose. Though diverse, for a common goal. Though diverse, for a better Kenya. All of us are speaking towards the same goal, although probably in different languages. That is what gives me the courage to keep going. That is what gives me the energy to keep waking up in the morning and even turning up for such conversations. Redemptor.
Sorry, before I invite Jimmy Wanjiki to speak, Joshua, I have a small question for you. If it's not traumatizing for you, there are people who don't know you will probably post your interview on the Jumbo Trail for comments. But just in summary, who is Joshua since that abduction? And the courage that you got to get back up after that harrowing, especially that you survived when so many other young people did not. Someone who've never heard of you before. Who is Joshua?
All right, thank you. Who is Joshua? I am Joshua. But anyway, my name is Joshua Okayo. I am a lawyer and I am undertaking my advocates training program at the Kenya School of Law to become an advocate. Currently, I'm also serving as the president of the Student Governing Council at the Kenya School of Law. And, talking about the Gen Z movement, which I think is still the case, I was one of the very key people who participated in coining a lot of things around the movement, even before we started going to the streets. And I brought some of my, part of my team together. I brought my friends, I brought the people I lead at the Kenya School of Law together. I kept making calls. I kept urging people to turn up for what is right, what we believed and still believe is right. And that was to beat the monster that then was the Finance Bill 2024. But that was a trigger. We all agreed that was a trigger of so many other things that have been happening before our eyes, and we've never had the audacity to speak. We've never taken the action to speak up. But this was the time to speak. And because this was the chance to even uproot a system that has long lived, we decided to go all out and do the many other things that have been happening even after the conversation about Finance Bill went down. Now, I was targeted. And my story probably, it's out there. But maybe someone who's not seen my story or heard my story is that a group of men came for me at my place. They could not locate the exact house, but 3 people called me, 2 of whom I spoke to, 1 I did not. After I realized that 2 people who had called me were speaking the same language and telling me to leave my place because it was unsafe. That was 26th, immediately after the 25th bridging of the parliament. So I left. And immediately I left, I didn't even move away from wherever I am, wherever I live. Just a short distance. Then these people caught up with me, dragged me into a car and drove off. I experienced a harrowing experience for about 45 hours in the hands of these people. Sometimes driving, sometimes at some point they got me into a I don't know whether it's a room or a house. And within this period, I did not eat, I did not drink, I did not do nothing. But I was thinking about the end of my life. Because at that point, I didn't know what they were planning. I didn't know what was coming next. My hands were cuffed. My head was covered. I was blindfolded. Nothing was happening in my life, really, except for the thought that now this was probably the end of my life. But finally, when they got me out of a car and threw me out, I found myself being woken up by a group of villagers in Maragua River. And yes, that was the beginning of all this. So I realized later when I came out that my friends, my people at the Kenya School of Law, advocates, I can see Willis is here, the likes of Willis, advocate, were speaking so strongly about my disappearance. And they were all over the news, all over making statements and fighting, in solidarity to ensure that I was out. And sometimes I think about it and I'm like, yes, this is what really helped. This is probably what showed these people that they could not just dispense with me so easily. And I thank God I'm out. So when I came out, I met several people, some of whom have very serious experiences in government. And one of the things they told me is that at this time, you are very lucky that you came out alive. But this is the point you have to speak loudest. Because should you go silent, then you'll be giving these people very easy time to do away with you. I took that seriously. So when I came out, actually, from the very onset, in my head, I was very conflicted because I didn't know whether to go on with the fight that we started. I think maybe quite a number of people just see the Joshua that was abducted, but they don't see the Joshua before, the Joshua who was leading a group of young people for change, the Joshua who was seriously on the street and calling out every other person who was on the other side. That is what people don't see. People see the person who was abducted. But thank you for, telling me to to tell you about the Joshua before and even after. So number one, self-preservation. That means I have to speak loudest for my safety, for my security. And number two, I have to continue the journey that we started because the journey is not over yet. I believe it is not over. But we have to fight it. We have to walk the journey. The people we started with, and those, especially those who looked up to me to probably give direction in my own small way, in my own small space, would be so disappointed if I decided to go back to sleep right now or to do other things when the country is burning, when the country is experiencing a lot of injustices, one of which is enforced disappearances. We can see even very powerful people, as powerful as one of the guests we have tonight, is not at peace because this rogue government keeps, surveilling people. So they would not be very happy with me. They would be disappointed, and Kenyans would be disappointed. So yes, we have to pick up the broken pieces. We have to maybe forget whatever happened and hope that it doesn't happen again. And we have to fight and forge ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you so much, Joshua. Redemptors, I'm so glad at the tone today's conversation has taken, where it's one of courage, it's one of, I know you guys don't want to call it heroism, but really, I know to many people who are tuned in, you are. To everyone that's tuned in, please go ahead and retweet the space so people can know that we're having this very important conversation. A lot has stood out to me so far, but the thing is courage. The courage to do the right thing. And it is having a bigger impact than any of us could believe. Redemptor.
Thank you, Joshua. And I look forward to hearing more of the plans you have. And I thank you because you're willing to have an intergenerational dialogue, because that is what is missing. Like RK has so rightly said, no one can do this alone. And the reason why we are really touched that Jimmy Wanjigi is here tonight is because many are asking, now that the odious debt is out, why are they surveilling you? What more information do they want to keep from you? Because it is extraordinary courage. It is extraordinary gifts and talent and also information that makes people get targeted. So thank you for standing with all the comrades during the Mandamano, the Gen Z that has now moved to Gen Zote. And we would have liked to hear about the odious debt, but it's already out there. What we want to know is, what are those cars doing outside your home? And is the surveillance level different for different people? How is it affecting your life? Because sometimes we think because someone is in a position of power that they are not human, that this is not affecting your wife, your mother, your daughter, your son, and all the people who look up to you. Your home is under siege. Some of us live in smaller houses. We could probably uproot ourselves and run, but you have so much at stake here in terms of that you've invested your resources to tell us the truth. What would you encourage us? And again, you deserve to be told pole for what you've gone through. It doesn't mean because I don't know you, I don't know the torture. I said this show is part of self-preservation because I know that I'm also being watched. And thank you, Ruben, for reminding us that we look fear in the face. Jimmy Wanjigi, the young people are looking to hear from you a word of hope. Karibu.
Asante sana, Redemptor. I want to thank you and Dr. Momi for this invite. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you very much. I also want to commend my previous speakers. I caught my good friend Ruben talking, and of course Joshua, another new recent good friend. They've spoken very well, very courageously. They are two patriots of this country. Now, I am not one to want to keep talking about myself, but sometimes it is good to explain so that people know what others go through and take courage, because we have long experience in this country. We've seen a lot. My current situation, Redemptor, is that from the 7th of this month, there has been there have been vehicles outside my residence. The sole purpose of those vehicles, apart from surveillance, is to jam all the systems, the internet, any phone communication, sometimes satellite on and off. And they have been there until Monday this week. On Monday, they left at 4 o'clock and have not been back until this evening. So this evening, at about 6, they're back again. And they've jammed all the systems. I cannot talk from my house. I cannot take this show from my home. They are also physically surveilling me. So as I travel around the city, there is physical surveillance. Now, this is pure intimidation. There's nothing else to it. They can do all these things without being visible, but they've chosen to be visible. They've chosen to be visible because these are intimidation tactics on myself, on my family. And I think they're trying to advertise to everybody else that if we can do this to Jimmy, we can do it to each and every one of you. And I want people to take heart. This is now a regime that has decided they are not going to operate by the tenets of our constitution and democracy. In democracy, there's no room for this sort of thing. There's no room for surveillance, illegal abductions, the use of the gun. William Ruto got to power through the ballot. You cannot govern us through the bullet. This is a very unfortunate circumstance in this country. We are 60 years since independence. We have multi-party democracy. We have a new constitution, 2010. For some of you, it's not new, but it's new. It's the second constitution you have in this country. And the one thing that constitution guaranteed us was political rights. Fought very hard for those political rights. And they are anchored very well in the clear chapter on our human rights. The rights of every Kenyan, what they are due just by being a citizen. They are wasting time sending all these vehicles outside my home and following me everywhere I go. There are enough challenges. We do not pay taxes so that they so-called try and intimidate political opponents, people who have different opinions than themselves. Those people are operating without taxes. It is our revenue that is sustaining them. NIS has a big budget. It has a 46 billion shilling budget. It is larger than even the judiciary. And to imagine that they use that to surveil opponents of William Ruto, to try and intimidate us, is a very sad state of affairs. And I want to say on this show, and I'll be very loud and clear, I'm sorry, we are not intimidated. We stand by what we have said. We stand by the truth, and we stand by the change that this country so desperately needs. These tactics were used long time ago. And if you don't mind, Redemptor and Mumbi, I would like to just give us just a short synopsis of the history of this sort of thing. In 1887, after the Berlin Conference of Otto von Bismarck, it was called the Prussia Conference, a man which started what you call the scramble for Africa. The British came to Kenya, and they came to Kenya with a company called Royal East Africa from India. And they came for three things: to come here, to extract for wealth for themselves, to exploit the inhabitants of the country, and to dominate. Those were their three goals. I call them EED. Those goals were clear, and they set up a system of doing just that. The scramble for Africa was a premise because the Europeans were fighting so much for the little wealth they had in Europe that they decided there's a new place that has been discovered that needs to be conquered. And they felt they had some very naive natives who did not know the world, and they were going to come and conquer us and exploit us. By 1902, that company called Royal East Africa Company had become Imperial British East Africa Company. And in 1902, Kenya became a protectorate of the British government. That company, which came to exploit, which came to extract, which came to dominate, the individuals of that company in 1902 started forming themselves as a civil service of Kenya, the new protectorate under the British regime. So a company which came here to make profit suddenly became the government. The sole purpose of a company is to try and make profit. So that company which wanted to make profit decided now they are going to govern to make profit. So they became the government, they became the civil servants. And the policemen that were created at that time were the watchmen of those companies and the individuals, the settlers that had formed in 1902. The watchmen. So the watchmen were to protect them. Everybody outside was a problem, was an enemy of the people inside. That system was further embedded in 1920 when we were formally colonized by the British regime. Now, fast forward. Tell me what has changed. The civil service, the government machinery, does nothing else. It extracts from us, it exploits us, and it dominates us with their police and their security systems. We changed the white colonialist for an African colonialist that continued the same thing. In 2010, the new constitution gave us more power to fight that dominance of extraction, exploitation, and domination of the police. But you can see, because we have been unclear about exploitation and extraction, the powers that be are still using the police, no matter what their limitations in the constitution, and the power we have as a sovereign to continue to dominate us. How do we stand and sit here and talk when up until today, our freedom fighters of the recent revolution, the one that is going to change Kenya completely and absolutely, 60 plus are said to have been killed. Some figures go up to even 200. We have people being abducted. I am still alive. I'm still here. You can frustrate me with communication, but we are still moving around. We are still breathing oxygen. There are people who have died. There are people like my friend Bob Jage and the two Longton twins who came to see me in Kamkunji when I was illegally arrested. I say illegally because the police had an order saying you cannot arrest him. And they chose to ignore that order, to tell you that they are taking orders from somewhere else. We've seen the lack of accountability of our IG. Those three young men visited me in Kamkunji. And when they did, soon after, giving comfort to friends and family who were at Kamkunji outside and singing some good patriotic songs, on their way home they were abducted. This is now over 5 weeks. We don't know where they are. This is the Kenya that we are living in the year 2024. Really? Really? 2 years just after an election? So-called the most democratic election some Western observers and diplomats have stated. 2 years after, this is the Kenya? I can tell you this, that William Samoei Ruto is a very frightened man. These are the tactics of an extremely frightened human being. I think they are still shell-shocked with what Gen Z did. Still shell-shocked. But I can also tell you this, that they know they cannot solve the problem. They know that uprising can and will come up again because there's an underlying problem. Reject Finance Bill was but a trigger. But as you saw, even after it was rejected, people stayed on the streets because pain is still being felt. Serious economic pain. And this economic pain, unfortunately, this regime cannot solve. This pain was created, and I can tell you this with a certainty. It was created 12 years ago when the two of them came to power. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto. I did their MOU. William Samoei Ruto took the anchor of the treasury with his minister called Rotich. That is when a regime decided they are properly going to extract from us. They are going to exploit us as their Kenyans, and they are going to dominate us. And they chose to do so economically. Today, we are slaves. We are slaves to one big monster that they created called debt. And we've been trying to talk about it for the last 2 years. No matter which way you turn, as long as we do not deal with the debt, what you call odious debt that has nothing to do with us, we are never going to solve this problem. We can talk all the things that we want to talk, but the extraction, the exploitation, and the dominance was set into place. And William Samoei Ruto knows he cannot open that can of worms because it will come to bite him. It will eat him. It will gobble him. It will swallow him. And I want to just explain primarily how they started it. Because they did so unconstitutionally. They decided that the Constitution of Kenya does not work for extraction, exploitation, and dominance. And they're going to operate outside the Constitution to embed this. And we all need to come to the same page on this because we can all go around talking, but this is where the problem is. It is the anchor of all the issues you're seeing, whether it is strikes, whether it is no projects being done, whether it is malfeasance, whether it is a hard hand of police because they have to push back somehow with their dominance because we are sniffing at what the problem is. They know that it will gobble them and swallow them. And they did so deliberately. They did so knowingly. They did so with a very clear vision of what they wanted to achieve. And they simply started this way. They looked at chapter 12 of our Constitution, and that is called Public Finance Management. It manages the finances of the government, of us, the people. That chapter was crafted so very well because of the malfeasance that had happened prior in the old Constitution. And that chapter is simply about controls, the law on controls. You either do it, if you don't do it, you are doing an unconstitutionality, should be in a court of law, having committed a crime. Just like anybody who knows, if you have an accountant who knows accounting, you know there are certain things you do. If you're a banker, there are certain things you do. You have controls. If you go outside of those controls, you become a criminal. So way back in 2014, the government decided they're going to become criminals. They looked at chapter 12 and it was not working for them. It did not perpetuate their interests. So they looked at a couple of chapters, articles, and they said, we're going to change them. They started with 220. 220 clearly states what a budget is. A budget shall contain the estimates of revenue and the estimates of expenditure, both development and recurrent. Two very distinct, very distinct estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure. That is the budget of Kenya. Number two, they looked at the consolidated fund and they said that doesn't work for them. This is Article 206. It says all revenue of government. When I say all revenues, tax revenue, debt revenue, that is considered revenue when we take debt, must enter the consolidated fund. Apart from two things, A and B. If there is a fund created by Parliament, such as the development, such as the petroleum development levy, or B, if A and A, if an MDA, what is called Ministry, Department, or Agency of Government, makes extra money on its own, it can keep that money. Those are the first two. Let me start with those before I go to the last one. So you come to the budget, estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure. The estimates of revenue clearly state the following. All the tax revenue that the government is anticipating to collect, and from where. So for example, stamp duty must be there. Passenger levy tax of the airport must be there. Traffic offenses taxes must be there. Any income from traffic offense is estimated, and so on. So you list all the revenue the government is expecting to collect. And the basis of this is that your revenue should equal your expenditure. All right? Because the makers of our constitution envisaged a balanced budget. All that is collected in tax revenue should be able to take care of all our needs or expenses. But it also says in section 2 or subsection 2 of that particular article that if there's any deficit, in other words, any shortage, it should also be listed. In other words, any shortage, any deficit, any debt must also be listed in the revenue estimates. So if for example, there is a shortage between revenue and expenditure, then if you are going to borrow, you must list it on the revenue estimates that are tabled before Parliament. Now, that is the Constitution of Kenya. Now, what they decided is that because there are so many limitations, if they are going to borrow, for example, the law says you can only borrow for development in the medium to long term. So if you're going to borrow, you must anchor that borrowing on the expenditure side. So if you put a borrowing on the revenue estimates, you must show it on the expenditure estimates development, because you can only borrow for development. So it must show if you're borrowing from Exim Bank China, it is Exim Bank on the expenditure side doing a road project somewhere in Kenya on the development expenditure. Now, that had very many limitations because then you cannot anchor odious debt. And they wanted to anchor odious debt. And I want you to understand what odious debt means and what debt means. Debt in principle is tax in advance. You can see why there was reject finance bill. Reject finance bill are revenue raising measures. How to raise more tax that you would then anchor in the tax bill, right after you pass the budget. Now, this is the pain we are feeling. Why are we keeping on being taxed heavily? Why are we feeling a crumbling, a shrinking of our revenues, our personal revenues? It's because debt is tax in advance. You take debt today, it has to be paid tomorrow. Any of you who've done so with a bank or M-Pesa, M-Shwari, whatever it is, you know that it is payment that is going to be collected tomorrow. And that is what debt is. Now, because they wanted to anchor odious debt, you cannot anchor odious debt if you table the revenue estimates, because it forms part of what is called the appropriation bill, which is the budget. And that is what is signed. That is what is signed by the president and assented to and becomes law as your revenue and your expenditure for a government. Now, we bothered to do something very simple. And yes, it is true, we did spend a few resources to collect data. Because, we're not understanding what was going on here. So we collected data. And we said, what has been going on? So we got the good help of and commissioned a few forensic auditors. And forensic audit is very simple. You look at the law and you look at the practice, what has been done. With a view of looking for a fraud. The intention is clear. Forensic auditor looks and smells to find fraud. So we suspected something was not right. So we did numbers, very simple numbers. What is what you call our primary balance? What are our expenses and what have been our revenues? So we looked at all our revenues from KRA and all our revenues from 2013 July to June 2023, a period of 10 years, came to a figure of 13.3 trillion. That was tax revenue side. And then we looked, in other words, no debt, no uptake of debt, no provision of debt payments. Then we looked at expenditure. And we said, what was our expenditure? Again, no debt payments in the expenditure. And we found our expenses were 14.6 trillion. So if we're to look for the deficit, what is called a shortfall between our revenue and all our expenses. When I say expenses, I am saying you have development, which is 6 trillion of those 14.6 in 10 years. You have county money. You have all the salaries of government. You have all the pensions. And you have all the expenses, including William Ruto's trips abroad, all anchored there. Right? They were 14.6 to a tax revenue of 13.3. Now, if you look at those two figures, the shortfall is 1.3 trillion. So he said, so what was borrowed? Because all we needed to borrow to take care of the deficit in 10 years, please make note, was 1.3 trillion. When we looked at the borrowings, there was 7.4 trillion. 6.4 trillion more than we needed. And we cannot find it in the budget. Ejamta, do you have a question?
Yes, I need to interrupt a bit so that I know you've been talking about this for 2 years. One thing is for a fact, I have never had anybody denounce or deny or call what you talk about as propaganda. The question is, yes. It sounds like we are talking about an economic crime. Does it mean someone can go to jail? And now, the sign that Kenyans are ready for a savior, I'm sorry for lack of a better word, is that you've given us the problem. The problem is humongous. Right now, everyone is running helter-skelter saying, is it the unfinished project? Is it the scams in those projects? Is it the Adani deal? Or is it odious debt that is going to liberate us? Can heads roll because of this expose that you give continually? And my last question I want to give you all of them is, has anybody approached you, Jimmy, and said, stop doing? Or are they just intimidating you with the surveillance? I think I've done 4 questions in one.
I think I'll try and summarize them. Redemptor, yes, that is correct. First and foremost, nobody has contradicted those figures. Nobody has contradicted the assertion of odious debt. I think for a long time now, people thought that Wananchi were not listening. And I think what you saw as Gen Z and the issues that are being raised sort of brought to the attention that actually people are listening. People are listening because they are feeling the economic pain and they're trying to find out exactly what is going wrong here. What is going wrong here? So I believe they know we are speaking the truth. Two, you asked me whether I have been approached. When we started this and when I went very public about it last year, yes, the William Ruto's government did approach, in a sense, trying to ask me to just, wait, they're going to sort out this problem. They're going to sort out the issues that are there and give them time. And I did up until the budget of 2023. And when that happened in the budget of 2023, I saw they're perpetuating the same thing because that budget did not include the revenue estimates as the Constitution. And he said, this is now deliberate. So we were behind the challenge you saw in the Finance Bill of 2023. Which climaxed, well, it hasn't climaxed, we're waiting for the ruling. But we're behind some of that. We're behind some of the challenges on the housing levy, for example, where you've seen Kiomtata, we've worked very well together on those issues. We've had a team that has put together some very good numbers and articulation of the fraud being perpetuated on Kenyans. So we challenged them in court. And the court ruling in the rule as the Court of Appeal did, upholding the Constitution of Kenya. Then they are saying that the budget that has so-called even been passed by William Ruto because it did not have the revenue estimates is null and void. And the minute that ruling happens, because I can't see how they can rule against the Constitution of Kenya. That violation articulated would mean that William Ruto's government has no right to collect taxes, has no right to take any more debt. But it anchors something even more fundamental. It anchors the fact that for so many years we have accumulated odious debt. Anything that is outside the Constitution is odious to us. And that means we've got to ask ourselves, where is that money? Because it never came to us. It never paid for any single thing to us. And Redemptor, I just want you to appreciate how criminal it is, because it goes back to what I was saying about exploitation, extraction, and dominance. So the Kibaki regime, for example, decided that they are not going to borrow any domestic money. Anything that we have deposited in our banks, the Kibaki regime avoided doing. They don't need it. We're not going to take it. And imagine they were operating under the old constitution. So that money which we deposit in banks became available for each and every one of us to go and borrow to go and do business. And the rule of thumb is this, that those who boost the economy, the private sector, those who are working, right, have access to capital, right? That capital boosts them, and the government then has a right to come and take taxes from us, right, to further development of our lives. Now, which means that our local money that we deposit in our banks, because it is our deposits, banks do not own money, it's our money as the citizens and depositors of this country, they should be loaning us money, give us access to that capital so that we can do business, and out of doing business or working, creating employment and so on and so forth, grow the economy, right? And as we grow the economy, government takes taxes from us to give greater services to those who are not as privileged to have opportunities, so that we lift everybody's standard of living and foster development for each and every one of us citizens of this country. That was the rule of thumb under Kibaki. Now, under the new regime, and this one is even worse than the previous one, they decided that they are going to gobble up all the money in those banks, our local banks. So as we are talking today, they have taken from our banks, this is the government of Kenya, 5.4 trillion shillings, right? That is what they have in their possession. That cannot be shown to have built a bridge or done a borehole or paid a salary of a chief. It is nowhere in the expenditure of government. In the expenditure of government, it is our taxes that are shown to have paid for it. It is absolutely nowhere, even though it is illegal for them to borrow to pay a salary or to pay for petrol of police cars, because that is what is called recurrent. You can only borrow for development. We still cannot find it in any of those expenses. So they decided they are taking away our money that we have deposited from our banks. And yet they're still making our taxes as we're not growing. And when we make noise, they come and dominate it with police and the propaganda and useless politics. This is what we are dealing with.
Can we sue them?
So we have become slaves.
Can we sue them?
Sorry?
Can we sue them?
What we have done, of course, is that we have gone to court to tell them that first and foremost, we want this violation declared. The Court of Appeal declared the violation. And that's why I think you saw recently that the Finance Bill of 2023 became null and void, because that's what William Ruto was supposed to do after Gen Z killed 2024 Finance Bill. And he had to now go back to 2023 to anchor what he called an illegal supplementary budget. There's nothing like a budget supplementary that he's trying to do here, calling it a second budget. He went back to the finance raising measures of 2023. And the Court of Appeal cancelled that finance bill of 2023, saying it was anchored on an illegal budget that did not have the revenue estimates. So he was forced to now go back to revenue raising measures of 2022, which was under the regime of Uhuru Kenyatta. So for example, right, if the court upholds the ruling, VAT on our petroleum will come from 16% to to 8%. Things like e-teams will no longer be in existence, and very many other measures. So it will reduce his revenue-raising measures. So that's where we began. Let us start there, because that ruling that was done by the Court of Appeal is humongous. It means that we are not going to pay any more of this debt. It means that any of this borrowing that you're hearing him doing out on the market, calling for bonds and bills, please, I advise everybody who is on this show, stop buying his bonds and bills. Those are illegal bills. Those are illegal instruments. They're not anchored in our constitution. One day Kenyans will not pay for them, and you'll throw those bonds and bills down the toilet. You flush them down the toilet. Do not buy them. This year, he has illegally said that he's coming to borrow from the same domestic market, our money from our banks, another 1 trillion shillings, 978 billion to be exact. We are stopping them, Redemptor. We are stopping them every step of the way. And I guess that's why a lot of the attrition, because as you know, a government survives on 3 basic pillars: the people, money, and guns. Those are the 3 basic pillars. We all know William Ruto has lost the people. He cannot hold on to money. He doesn't have it. It's all going. It's all being eaten up by all this odious debt that he has been taking. And it is crumbling him. He's also now unable to come back to us and hit us with more taxation. So we are stopping his illegal borrowing. We are stopping it. And we are advising any Kenyan, do not loan your government. They are doing so illegally. They are taking your money illegally. They'll one day not be able to pay for it. It is illegal. Yeah. They're using it to support and finance and cover up a Ponzi scheme that they began. So you are supporting their Ponzi scheme. You're supporting the illegality. Do not ever take a bill or a bond that is advertised. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. Apart from the fact that it's illegal, financially it's actually ludicrous. Your same taxes are going to pay that interest which you think you're getting. And the cost of living, I'm assuring you, right, is nullifying whatever gain you may think you're gaining. So it's actually even economically useless. So Redemptor, we are stopping this fellow.
Which one do we start first, Jimmy? Because like I've told you, the first sign that people are ready for liberation is they are looking for a savior. My daughter was in the streets and has asked me to ask you that there is the Adani deal that got people all worked up last week. Yesterday there was police brutality that got people worked up. Are we going to get worked up every week? But we don't see any tangible thing that this progress, the court has stopped this, the odious debt now is a reality. Where do we start? I feel like I don't know anybody who feels like me. Like we're in a house, na wezi wameingia na wanatuchapa. It's like they are calling us the thieves and yet they are in our house. And Jimmy knows what the problem is. And they have put these big machines outside his house. Is there something else they are fearing that you're going to expose? Are the people who are going to court to stop the petition about Adani, is it an odious debt or is it the Adani deal? Which is the one that is thinking us more, and which one we see?
Redemptor, what happens is that when we are crushed, we start selling our jewels. When we are crushed, the EED continues. When we have no more money to raise to pay debt, we now start selling our jewels, right? The airport is but one, and look at who it's being sold to, right? A foreigner. Right? And maybe some of the same African colonizers are in partnership with that foreigner. Right? I can tell you, there are very many patriotic Kenyan Indians. And I say that with clarity. But Adani is spoiling the Indian name and Indian relations with Kenya. What he's coming to do is what began in 1887. Remember Royal East Africa Company? It was an Indian concern just run by British, that came here to dominate, to extract, exploit, and dominate. It is a continuation of the same thing. That's why we are so angry, right? We are so angry. Now, I want you to understand this, that we are not going to solve this problem until we get rid of this chain. What is the chain? The chain is debt. It's not a chain. When we were fighting for our independence, we believed that the chain was the colonialist who was sitting on us. When we were fighting for political liberation under the second liberation, right, multipartism, we believed, right, the one-party system was our chain, right? Still, we had these same problems. We believed then that the chain is the old constitution. We changed and removed that old constitution and brought a new one, yet the chain is still there. The chain is our debt. If we get rid of this odious debt, we are then going to be free economically, because now we are going through a very different phase of liberation. It is called economic empowerment. What has eluded us ever since 1920, when we were first colonized? The problem is that we are not meant to grow economically. The domination is economic. So they use politics, they use the police, they use dominance to sit on us economically. We are not supposed to enjoy the fruits of our good nation, the fruits of our labor. That is where we are going. Yes, Pombi.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Before I even ask my question, let me remind everyone that we are on the Smart Enough show. We will be opening up the floor. We do keep a tight schedule, so there's a limited time, but we will be opening up the floor to questions. So we can see a lot of you have requested the mic. A lot of you have made comments. But Jimmy, when we talk of Kenyans who want to speak out, who have found themselves in this, in the face of intimidation and fear, what is the solution for us as Kenyans? Because I even feel like there's such a heavy weight for us to come back on the streets or for us to move forward. It's like the fear has definitely gripped some generations. Some may say the generation you're part of are the ones who really get gripped by that fear and spread it. What would you say? Because we can't stop it here. It doesn't end here.
Mombi, let me tell you something. The one thing that brought people out on the streets was pain. And that pain is not going to stop. In fact, it's going to get worse, and it's getting worse every single day. That pain, I want to assure you, we have not seen the bottom of it. But it is soon coming. There's going to be what you call the suddenly moment. He's reaching the end of the rope. And this is why they are very after some of us. He's reaching the end of his rope, okay? And some of the nightmares that are coming, that are clearly plaguing William Ruto's mind is debt default. Because the pain of debt default is humongous. It means then that now it's not about taxes, now it's about what you have, what you and I have, that they come to take, because after all, we are the guarantees of this odious debt, so-called. But I say we're not guarantees of odious debt. We're guarantees of debt, not the odious one. Because the odious one is not in our constitution. We're not the guarantees. But what will happen in a situation of debt default is that you and I, and every Kenyan is going to ask, what are we defaulting on? Wait a minute here. This has got nothing to do with us. And what did you think is going to happen when we start asking about where trillions of our money went and why we are being forced into slavery because of it? Who will it eat? It will eat very many, including William Samoei Ruto. There's no way, absolutely no way, we are going to take this pain. And I can assure you, many of us, I included, should not fear him. We will be on those streets if that's what it takes. We shall be out there. I have seen the most courageous thing I ever saw on June 25th, when kids ran towards bullets. I've never seen that. Never even saw that during the clamor for multipartism. It was only akin of the stories we used to hear about the Mau Mau, the way they used to face the British soldiers and their home guards when they had guns and they just had few bows and arrows and they would run towards those bullets. It is akin to that. This is going to get worse.
Sasa anataka anaomba
this is going to get worse. So we must take courage. We must be very clear that the Kenya we want is not too far. And the Kenya we want, we have to fight for. Just like our forefathers fought for our political rights, we have to do the same sort of struggle for economic ones. And what is ahead is a situation that will best define us as Kenyans and probably be the birth of a new sub-Saharan Africa. That birth will be a more ideological African, a more programmed African to achieve, an African that has an agenda, just like the colonialists had an agenda when they came here. We don't have an agenda. We are too busy thinking about how we should keep our stomachs full. We've been made to be like that. We've had what you call planned poverty in this country, where 60% are struggling just to put food in their stomach. 30% are the ones that you're talking about are so scared because they're just a salary or a mortgage away from that poverty. 10%, and even of that 10% who are up there, probably 1% are the ones who are really ruling us and dominating us. And I'm saying that this is the order that is going to change. And many people do not want to see that change coming. Many people are afraid of it, but it is something that they cannot stop. And pain is what is bringing us here. Yes, Redemptor.
The pain drove the young people towards the bullets. Now, let's assume we're in a round table. Joshua is here and he was one of our guests, and he's told us he's a leader in his own right. So, Joshua, I'm going to give you an opportunity as a legal mind, and you represent a constituent of very energetic young people to ask Jimmy direct questions of the pain that drove your peers towards the bullet. Is there an end in sight for you as you listen to him today? So I'm not telling you what to ask him, but I'm giving you an opportunity, because I'm assuming you represent maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000, maybe 10,000. Here is someone who can save us because he knows what the problem is. Take the mic.
Thank you. I hope I can be heard. And
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Lots of wisdom there. I'm wiser. Every time I listen to people in spaces, I get wiser than I were 2 or 3 minutes before. But Jimmy, really, the young people now feel that, let me call them our parents, because you are in the bracket of our parents, have abandoned us in a way. And most of them feel like there's nothing we can do about a government, and a government is all powerful, almighty. And they are feeling like we have lost it all. And much as they support us in prayers, they see no possibility of getting William Ruto and his government out of power. Do you think that is the case? And if yes, then what more, what better can we do? If no, then give us, or rather tell us a way forward according to you.
Thanks so much, Joshua, for that. Now, you say parents such as myself. Here I am a parent of Gen Zs who are also on the street. And I am fighting. I have stuck out my neck. I did not have to stick out my neck. I didn't have to find out what our real basic problem here is, and to try and give civic education about it. And apart from civic education, I've been very active, very, very active. We just talked about court cases, but in very many ways, trying to make sure that this agenda for a greater tomorrow for your generation is there. I would not like to join you in your brandishing my generation as a whole as having given up. I don't agree with you. The encouragement you say you get in restaurants is encouragement we are getting every single day from even my generation. encouragement and major support, I can tell you, in kind and in deed. So I think you shouldn't say that. Maybe your parents think that, but many parents, or maybe many people my age and below are very clear that this is no longer sustainable. And they have not given up. We have been here. Kenya is a country of us, Joshua. You're a young man. There was a time people never believed the Mzungu would ever leave Kenya. And there were those Africans who were saying, in fact, Africans are not ready to rule Kenya. And we should keep the Mzungu. And the Mzungu left. There were those who believed Moi would never ever leave Kenya. That he'll be president until death. Because that was the constitution, by the way. It had no term limits for a president. And he left. He walked off the stage. He walked off the stage. There are those who would have told you we would never have had a new constitution in this country unless there was a war and the two sides have been put together because of war and changing the constitution. We have a new constitution. William Ruto is not God. William Ruto will be removed the same way he was put by the people of Kenya. I believe he'll be very lucky to survive until 2027. The kind of problems that are coming are insurmountable for him. I think it's even unfortunate that he's even trying to hang on when he knows he cannot solve the problems that are there. He's now playing petty politics, trying to take us back to old-time politics of tribe division and the same old game that the colonialists brought here, divide and rule. It's nonsense. We are not going to be divided. We are united in pain, major economic pain, and we are united in economic emancipation. And it's not just Gen Z, it's all of us, Joshua. All of us. Your parents are all trying to earn money and they can feel the pain. Yes, Mom.
Thank you so much, Jimmy and Joshua. Joshua, I feel what you were saying in terms of the silent Kenyans who are supporting us quietly, but if the lion was to roar or if the dragon was to roar, they might go and cower behind the trees. But I'm really appreciating everything that has been said. Everyone, just remember, you are on the Smart In show where all the guests are smart Kenyans. Today, our main guest is Jimmy Wanjigi and Joshua, the head of the Law Society. We're so grateful. Ruben has also said a couple of words. Did you want to invite some people to speak, Redempta, or to ask Jimmy one or two questions?
It is more questions time than people making presentations and also coming to rant. I have abstained from providing a platform for ranting. Now that you've seen Jimmy is in the house, you want to throw a few punches. But I think before I give Protas an opportunity to come and ask a question or make a very summary submission, we're going to talk about the difficult conversation of the money. That right now the campaigns that are going on civic education are being funded by a few Kenyans. This is going to dry up. Now, if I host this space and I invite Ruben or Jimmy, people assume that you're my sponsor. But at the end of the day, you've already spent a lot of money on these odious debts. Where else are you willing to help the young people? Because I think Joshua is saying, look, quiet, you have to follow the leader who has the money, even among the young people. And then there's a labeling that came with, this is a sponsored demonstration. Protas, I'm giving you the opportunity, Jimmy, to think about what I've just said. Protas, you have the mic. In a few seconds, we'll give someone else. Okay. Who else had given the mic? Son of someone? Son of someone? Son of faith?
Okay, thank you very much. I think Mr. Jimmy raises very crucial information that Kenyans, there are some Kenyans who are just wondering, I mean, how can, as you're saying, Dr. that when will the lion roar? As in, how can we have a savior, someone who can just take the bull by the horns and just, step up and say, no, enough is enough. Gen Zs tried sometimes back, and they were balkanized and they were infiltrated. So I don't know. I'm just wondering, how is the best way that this can be solved? Thank you very much.
The question is for Jimmy.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let me put it this way. Saviors, heroes of battles emerge. This is a battle, a very major battle for economic emancipation. We are but one. There are many. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, there are many. And I want to assure you that some of us, and I'll say that speaking of myself, I know people like Ruben Kikame. I know my own partner, Willis Sotieno, and very many like-minded Kenyans, Joshua here included, and a lot of other young people are very clear that this is a journey that must be completed. And they are prepared to stick out their lives to achieve that. I am. And I have. Notwithstanding, I have. And I really don't need to. But I'm a Kenyan. And it is called upon me to do so. Especially when God has so aptly given me the opportunity to know so much, to have been aware of so much, to have seen so much. You can't tell me that I've just been bequeathed with just to feed my family. No, it is to do my patriotic duty as a Kenyan and my faithful duty as a child of God, to fulfill his purpose for each and every one of us right here. And one of the things we have always believed in is that in as much as you grow, you must not leave anybody behind. And this mantra is not something that is common to people who perpetuate EED, exploitation, extraction, and domination. We believe, and I believe, that you must not leave anyone behind. We must grow together. That is how you make a great nation and a great world. And I can assure you, even if I'm to stand alone, I will stand alone and face the demon. Because it is, after all, what are we living for? If we cannot participate in a struggle such as this.
Amazing. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, Jimmy, and I'm sure you're an encouragement to many people across the generation. And I love how you stood up for your generation. I'm going to invite Charles to maybe make a small, to ask a question or to make a 1-minute submission. Charles, go ahead. Charles, you have the floor.
Is there anybody else who can take the mic? Protas had given you the mic before, as I wait for the real Joe. Okay, Protas' connection is poor, Charles. I don't see your mic going off, so the real Joe, please take the mic.
Good morning. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead and make a submission or ask a question.
Yeah, Charles, go ahead.
Thank you, guys. First of all, thank you guys for assembling here, and thank you for organizing this space. As the conversation began, we were talking about the fear that we're being sold right now, and courage. Let me tell you guys that for a fact, we cannot afford to be afraid I know things are bad. Like yesterday, I saw that video of that young man being brutalized, and somebody just taking a canister, opening and dropping there, and the boy there. So they have the police have become very brutal, open, and somebody has said that those are the symptoms of a dictator who is extremely afraid. So let me say that we cannot afford to be afraid, because if we let the situation get worse than it is right now, our children will have nothing. Personally, I have a 5-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, and I cannot sit and just watch. I cannot sit and not do anything. So, guys, let us not be afraid. Let us keep pushing. Let us push every day, every corner. Let us keep talking. Talk wherever you are. Let's not give up, because if we give up, our country is completely and totally gone. Thank you, guys. Those are my submissions. And thank you, Adigi, for everything that you've done so far. Pole sana for seeing what they've done to you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate that. The real Joe, submission and question, and be as brief as Charles was.
Thank you very much, Redemptor, for the mic. In this conversation that we're having today, while our active citizens under surveillance, I think when Jimmy Wanjigi was giving his submissions when he started, he talked about the history of this. It has been there ever since way back. And he gave examples of that. I will not even touch into that. But the concept I want to draw us into is the story of the Mad King. For those who have watched movies, I think some of you might have watched the Game of Thrones, the Mad King. And I want to attribute certain characteristics that I see in the current regime that I try to, that are similar to the Mad King. Number one, we are seeing psychopathic behaviors. Okay? We are seeing psychopathic behaviors. We are seeing lack of remorse in this regime. From William Samoei Ruto, lack of remorse. He recently said he's not aware of abductions, he's not aware of killings. How brutal can someone be? A president. We are seeing sadistic behaviors. Okay? We are seeing insanity, and I'm not putting this, and these are not even my own thinking. When I say insanity, he himself, the president, has questioned his own sanity. We've seen this in the recent interviews he has made. He has said, is he a madman? He has asked people, is he a madman? That is questioning your own sanity. Therefore, we are dealing with a mad king. We are seeing everything about a mad king right in front of our eyes. We saw what happened yesterday to a student, police brutalizing an armed student. And therefore, active citizens, for example, Joshua Okayo, have had to go through this kind of surveillance. We are seeing with Jimmy Wanjigi. I follow him on Twitter. I see what he posts in terms of people around his compound trying to jam his signal and things like that. These are paranoias. They are afraid. There are people, Christians believe that only it is in our language. I'm a Luo. In our language, I'll say it in Luo, then I'll try to translate. Janeko ringo makatanga malawe onge. Okay? A madman runs. Even when there's nobody chasing this madman, but he's still running. These are paranoid behaviors we are seeing right in front of us. And that is why we are having active citizens who are questioning pertinent issues. Why do we have a Adani deal? Why do we have our debt sailing currently as it is? What has it done to us? Can we equate our economy right now to a debt of 10 trillion? Can we see 10 trillion in development in our country? That is what Jimmy Wanjigi is saying when he's talking about odious debts. Can we see 10 trillion in terms of development in our country? Because if we see 10 trillion means for me, SGR 10 times, even if it was over appropriated, because we paid for SGR. SGR is now over 1 trillion.
10 of those, can we see them in our country? No, we can't see them. And when we question this, you are now under surveillance. And right now, this is what is happening in our country. As I yield, the only medicine to this, and this has proven from our past, protests in this country that has brought, they are the only thing, it is the only thing that has brought change into our country. Ever since independence, everywhere, protest is what has made regimes calm down. So we'll never stop at that. We are the supreme. We have been given the supreme power as per Article 1. All sovereign powers belongs to the people. We exercise them directly by occupying parliament and telling parliamentarians, pack and go, because it is us who choose them to represent us. That is what we need to do. Thank you very much. I will not talk much.
Thank you, Real Joe. Rastan, keep it short. And then Degwa.
You guys, good evening, and I like the work you have been doing all the time. You guys, everybody here, Wanjigi, respect you. Doctor, everybody, we are Kenyans, It doesn't matter what we eat, what we drive, no, we are Kenyans, okay? So it has not been easy for us for a long time. Even moving out of the country, going to look for, better pastures is because our country was not good governed, and we did not have that, the media was not, talking how it's supposed to be, saying what it's supposed to be, showing us the way as a media, So that time, and now we are being surveilled because we express, the things, we have knowledge and we have the gadgets, we have everything around us, So you can see how the British are happy censoring people. You can be jailed because of, having a post which is not, adding up to what they think around. So in America, we have one state there. They have also banned memes and that shit. So for us, Kenya now, what they're going to do, and I think that is going to happen right now, is they are going to surveillance. All of us, we are wanted by the government. I've been warned like 3 times, during the 25th, that time of parliament myself.